Well, as the guy who once infamously had to run a naked lap around this building, that was 18 months ago now, of course I take the New York Times seriously. Mark will never forget it. Mark was the guy trotting behind me around the building as I'm doing a naked lap. You were there for it. You saw it firsthand.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye out, making sure nobody was driving by that wouldn't get in trouble.
You were doing that as well. You were acting as bodyguard / photographer for the morning, going back to 2022, when on this show, if you're a new listener on 95.7 FM, I made a bet. And it was a bet that I lost. And the bet was that Sharice Davids, our congresswoman here in the 3rd District of Kansas, would not beat Amanda Atkins by double digits. And if you go back to that period of time, I made that bet after a poll came out from the New York Times in late October of 2022. And I just pulled up the poll this morning, and I'll explain why I pulled up the poll. It ties into what's going on in D.C. I pulled up the poll, and at that time, October 19th to October 24th of 2022, the question that was asked in their poll was, if November's elections were held today, which candidate would you vote for? And Sharice Davids led Amanda Atkins 54-39. And I said at the time, there's no way. No, there's no way. I mean, it's a mid-year or mid-cycle election. Republicans should do pretty well. There was talk of the red wave and all these different things happening. And then what happened? Sharice won by double digits. I want to say it was 12, 13 points. So then I ran my naked lap here around Corporate Woods and didn't get arrested since we did it at, 5:45 in the morning? And thank goodness it was a balmy November morning here in Kansas City on that fateful day. Thank goodness for that for a lot of reasons. So anyway, as I fast forward here to this week, to yesterday, this poll comes out from the New York Times that shows Donald Trump leading in 5 of 6 key swing states. Of course I believe it. Absolutely. Of all people, I am going to believe it. I am. Now, what does that mean, though? Does that mean that this thing's in the bag? Of course not. Not at all. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Just because, I can't tell you how many DMs I got yesterday on Twitter, on Facebook, saying, look at the poll, this is great. Joe's in trouble, Trump's cooking. There's still 6 months to go. Relax. That is an eternity. Now, here's the thing. It's one of those things where I think Rich Lowry from the National Review was on this show last week, and he put it very well. He said these next 6 months are going to be like raising a toddler. The days will go slow, but we'll look back on it and say, where did this go? And as someone who's raising right now a 5, a 3, and a newborn, that rang very true. And I think he's exactly right with that. The days will go slow. But the next 6 months are going to fly by. There's no doubt in my mind. So when Donald Trump leads in these 5 key swing states, he was leading in this New York Times poll that dropped yesterday. Nevada by 12, Georgia by 10, Michigan by 7, Arizona by 7, Pennsylvania by 3, only losing Wisconsin by 2. And he's making gains with black voters. He's making gains with young voters. He's making gains with Hispanic voters. It's incredible. They're tied with 18 to 29-year-olds. They're tied with Hispanic voters. Biden's got, right now, he's got a big lead with black voters in this poll, but Donald Trump is winning more than 20% of black voters. If that were to hold up in November, that would be the highest level of black support for any Republican presidential candidate since the enactment of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. You'd have to go back to our own Dwight Eisenhower to find a Republican who got as big of a percentage of share of the black vote as that. It's unbelievable. But what else does this signal? Before you start doing cartwheels, I read you all those numbers, and you know what my instinct has been as I've kind of dig through some of this over the last 12 hours or so? Why isn't his lead even bigger? If Donald Trump is even with Hispanic voters, if he's even with young voters, groups that gave Joe Biden more than 60% of their vote in 2020, if he's doubling his share of the black vote, what are we missing? What's going on? What's interesting is that where Joe Biden is not necessarily winning or doing well, but where he's making up a little bit of ground is in older voters and suburban women and, broadly speaking, some white voters. And that's very telling. It goes into my theory of the people that are, loving life right now, or at least doing okay and aren't feeling the pinch that tens of millions of Americans are feeling, are the OWWs, the overeducated woke whites. And many of them are also washed up boomers. Let's just call it like it is. This economy has not necessarily been bad for retirees. It hasn't necessarily been bad for older folks whose kids are long gone. They're out of college. They're on their own. They're not, trying to raise a family. Their house is paid off. They're not looking to buy a home right now. They're not in the housing market. They can get 5% on their money at zero risk in a money market account. Like, they're doing okay. They're in a pretty good place. And I think to what Mark Falter, our own Mark Falter, who does the Saturday and Sunday financial shows at 9 o'clock, he's alluded to this. He said, history always talks about the Jimmy Carter era and how brutal it was for the economy. And he's like, it's right. But he said, if you were like a boomer today, back in the late 70s, it was actually a pretty good time for you. Could make a lot of money at very little risk if you were in that place in your life. Of course, if you were just starting out, if you were just trying to build a career, if you were just trying to start a family, it was not so good during the Carter years. But there was money to be made. If you were in a point in life where the kids are gone, expenses are lower, and that's what it feels like we're living through right now, 45 years later. It's exactly what's happening today, and that's why it would make some sense that washed up hippies and then, boomers whose kids are gone, who've got their homes paid off and the whole thing, and can make money without any risk, they're okay with Joe. And many of them just can't stand the person, Donald Trump. So don't look at this poll and say to yourself, you know what? Boy, Trumper's got this thing in the bag. No, he doesn't. Not by any stretch. Now, it's a great poll for him. You'd rather be winning than losing in 5 of the 6 key swing states. You would, obviously. But at the same time, and it's funny, I'm looking at, I got multiple TVs in here. I'm looking at Fox. They're talking about this poll right now as well. But I guarantee you, our breakdown, our analysis is much better than theirs at 913-408-7957. They'll give you 30 seconds from one of their, know-nothing talking heads, and we're giving you, 8-9 minutes here of in-depth conversation. But anyway, I digress. Back to it. You look at this right now and you say, okay, Trump's winning. That's great. But the things that are still going to hold Trump back are himself. That's going to be the biggest thing. If he can make this thing about Joe over the next 6 months and not about him, he will end up winning in November. There's no doubt in my mind. Can he do that? Can he continue to, yes, play the victim card in the courtroom, which I don't have a problem with. Use it to your advantage. They're trying to take you out. Use it to your advantage. And then also on the flip side, say to yourself, you know what? I'm also going to do everything I can to make this about the other guy, to make it about the guy who's been in power for the last 3 years, and say, what do you want for the next 3-4 years? You want me? You know my track record? Do you want this guy? It's a very simple question. 913-408-7957. So don't start doing those cartwheels just yet. Gosh, it's only May 14th as we get it rolling on a Tuesday here on KCMO. Tirade Tuesday's coming up at 8:30. Start getting those tirades all set. That's going to be fun. What's up, John?
This whole story kind of reminds me of like how we were sure we were walking away with the AFC West last season and hosting another championship game. It was going well there for a while, and then we kind of hit a rough patch.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history.
And it worked out, but to your point, it wasn't as easy as it should have been, mate.
We were pretty giddy there early on.
Ain't that the truth? Don't fall for the trap. And we fell for that trap 2 years ago as well in the midterms. Don't do it. Don't do it. 6:15, happy Tuesday. Coming up, Speaking of the Chiefs, Harrison Butker, oh my goodness. This Benedictine commencement speech he gave went viral yesterday. We'll share it with you next. Oh, it's so ridiculous. I'm looking at cable news. They all have a little, just this little box in the corner of their screen. Some of them do, not all. And they're like, awaiting Michael Cohen's departure for Trump trial. Who cares? My goodness.
He's a cuckoo bird.
Guy's a loser. He gave you nothing yesterday. This whole thing is just a show trial. We all understand that. And they're treating this thing like the day-to-day matters. It's about the politics of it. It's not about what did Michael Cohen say today. I mean, they so desperately want this to be, I don't even know what they want it to be. O.J. Simpson's keeps coming to mind because it's the most prominent trial, of course, of most of our lifetimes. But it's just terrible. Dennis in Bonner Springs, what's up, D?
Hey, Pete. What you were talking about earlier, I agree with you about the white voters and the boomers to an extent, but a lot of the boomers I know are hurting big time. They're on limited incomes. They're paying 20% to 40% more for groceries. Their taxes are up.
Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. Then why is Biden gaining with that group?
I don't understand, Pete. I really don't. And that's why I wanted to say I agree with you with your statement, and I don't understand it either.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because I know a lot of seniors that are hurting big time, Pete. To the extent that if the housing market hadn't tanked, they would be selling their their homes. And some of them do have their homes up for sale, but they're not moving because they're going to move to somewhere where it's cheaper. Well, you're not gaining nothing because it's not cheaper anywhere else.
I was going to say, where are you going to go? Like, where are you going to go?
Anyway, you teased me with Butker, and I want to hear that.
All right, let me get to
day,
Butker.
sir.
Attaboy there. All right, hang in there, Dennis. Knock some sense into your colleagues and your contemporaries there. So Harrison Butker gave the commencement speech at Benedictine over the weekend. And wow, it has gone viral. Now, Harrison Butker, Chiefs kicker, is a Catholic, a very proud Catholic, a very strong Catholic, a very powerful Catholic. I'm trying to get all my Donald Trump-isms in there. Strong, powerful. So he's a big Catholic, and he went up there. What am I missing?
Maybe the best Catholic.
The greatest. Some may call him the best Catholic, yes. He gave the commencement speech, and he talked about his Catholic faith in particular. And he talked about the impact that it had on his family. And I want to play this for you because some people are going to hear this, and they're going to think that this is hearkening back to a time of, dad goes out to work and mom stays home with the kids. And that's not what I'm hearing here from Harrison Butker. Take a listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
That's Harrison Butker from his commencement speech at Benedictine over the weekend. Now, some people are going to hear that, and they're going to say, oh, man, this guy Harrison Butker, he wants us to go back to the Stone Ages. That's what he wants. What I heard from Harrison Butker there is a guy who said, our family, our success as a family, and my success, he noted it there, my success on the football field and as a Catholic is in large part attributed to my wife. That's what I heard from Harrison Butker. If you just hear the top line of what he's saying, you know, you may come away saying, Harrison Butker just wants the women in the kitchen and at home. But when you actually, and I had to listen back to it a couple of times, when you listen back in depth to what he is talking about there, what I'm hearing is a guy saying, our family, our children are better off. I am better off as a man, as a husband, as a father, because of these decisions that we have made as a family. It's also understandable to say, listen, in this economy, it's great if you're a kicker making a few $1,000,000 a year, but a lot of people can't do that. They can't afford that right now. And I understand, and we all do understand that, living in the real world. We do. So don't take that part of it and hold that against Harrison Butker, because to me, that wasn't the bigger picture point he was trying to make. The point that I heard from Harrison Butker is, you know, when you come together with your spouse, husband or wife, and you make those decisions to support each other and your family first, the rest will follow itself. And that might mean, frankly, the woman is the one outside the house. That's entirely possible. And the man is the one inside the house. I know people like that. I know couples and relationships like that. I don't think one's better or worse. It's whatever works for your family. But it's about what is at the center of your family. What is at the center of your relationship? That's, to me, what Harrison Butker is saying there in large part. Let's continue with Harrison Butker. Benedictine, Benedictine, Benedictine. I'm getting 17 different pronunciations here. Mark and John have an opinion. Plaza, tomato.
Warnell.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of those around here. So, it is Olathe, as you know, though. No Olathe.
No, none of that.
There are some around here where we all argue over it.
Oh, man. Well, anyway, I'm happy to get the opinions on that since the text line is going nuts. I should just get it confirmed from somebody I know who's very involved with Benedictine. But anyway, let's continue with Harrison Butker. He gave the commencement over the weekend. He went viral for some of these comments. They started dropping yesterday on social media. Here's the Chiefs kicker continuing with his commencement speech.
She's a primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She's the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal.
That's Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker delivering the commencement speech at Benedictine over the weekend. And first off, for a 28-year-old guy, what a way to deliver that speech. It's amazing, and we talked about it last week, the percentage of people who are under 35 who aren't grown up, who are living in mom and dad's basement, haven't been on a date in 5 years, haven't washed their hair in a week, right? We all talk about that, but then there's Harrison Butker. Then there's a guy who's 28 years old, a couple of kids, kicking for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, and having that kind of perspective on the world and on life and on marriage and on, fatherhood and everything else that takes a lot of people much longer to figure out. It's pretty damn impressive. Now, for those saying that this is Harrison Butker kind of pushing his faith and what happened to, hey, you be quiet now. It's you're an athlete. Nobody wants to hear your views on faith. No. It's a very different. This is not Colin Kaepernick. It's a guy in the offseason getting asked by an institution that, of course, is based in its faith. Benedictine is a Catholic school. And Harrison Butker is to use a Donald Trumpism, a strong Catholic. What else? Did we call him the best Catholic?
The best.
The best. The greatest. He's a very big Catholic, and he was asked to deliver this commencement speech at Benedictine, and he gladly went ahead and did it. As a Catholic helping out a Catholic school in his spare time. He didn't have on his Chiefs jersey. I didn't even hear the word Chiefs get mentioned there. He talked about his profession. He talked about his career. He alluded to what he does for a living. But I didn't hear Harrison Butker go on, yeah, that's me, kicker for the Chiefs. Yeah, woo, look at me over here. Yeah. No, he talked about really being a Catholic, and then what he does was secondary. It's very different than what you talk about when it's LeBron James or Colin Kaepernick or any of these guys who want to use their platform on the field or on the court to push whatever their political message is. And it's never something about their faith, right? Some may perceive what Harrison Butker said to be some way divisive. I don't believe it is. Nothing divisive about what he was talking about. He was talking about what it's like as a Catholic father and husband and how these students at Benedictine can use that platform to further their careers and their lives.
Yeah, and he's speaking to the bigger picture. In this particular industry, for instance, when your life is your job and then suddenly you don't work there anymore, it's kind of, it can be deflating if that's all you have. You need the family structure. That's the bigger picture in life, and that's not even necessarily just a Catholic thing.
No.
Right?
It's really not.
Spiritual.
Shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was talking about.
Right, the bigger picture.
Yeah, I love his message there. And to me, the message, whether it was about how his family is structured, it was not about going back to the Stone Ages. It's just about this is what works for our family when we put ourselves, our family, and our faith first, and we look at it through that prism, and the rest will figure itself out, so to speak.
You are more than your job or career.
Yeah, that's a great point. You are, and if you put yourself as a father and a husband first, or a mother and a wife first, everything else will fall into place. And that was the message I got in that moment, listening to that from Harrison Butker. We are not dealing with the cream of the crop in Jackson County. We've known that for a long time. I know many of you completely agree with that. But it's how the county ends up having some of the issues that it's having. So as we sit here today, we're about 6 weeks removed from that April 2nd vote where you in Jackson County said, I am not interested in giving the Chiefs and the Royals another 40 years of our 3/8 cent sales tax for the Royals to go downtown, for the Chiefs to upgrade Arrowhead Stadium. I'm not doing it. I can't afford my property taxes. My cost of living's gone up 20% across the board the last 3 years. I'm tapped out. I'm done. There was not a lot the Chiefs and the Royals could have done, but one of the many issues they faced is an incompetent county government led by none other than Frank White. Frank White was reelected, of course, a couple of years ago. There is nothing, or just last year, right? There's nothing to suggest that he's going anywhere. He's not like resigning tomorrow. There's not some big scandal we're aware of happening. So Frank White is going to be here for at least a couple more years. And the Royals and the Chiefs, if they want to do any kind of a deal with the county, they realize they've got to get through Frank White. The problem is between the county executive and the legislature, you do not have the cream of the crop for these teams to negotiate with and these teams to deal with. And a part of me feels bad for them, but then a part of me doesn't. And the more I thought about it, more and more of me does not feel bad for them. Because for those of us who cover these people on a regular basis, right, I could have told Clark Hunt, I could have told John Sherman, listen, over the last couple of years, it would be smart for you guys to play a bit of a role, even if it's privately behind the scenes in local politics. Because if not, these are the goobers you got to negotiate with. You got to negotiate with goobers like Manny Abarca. I mean, you want to talk about pathetic public servants, that's top of the list. You got to negotiate with people like Frank White. I mean, these are not the deepest thinkers in Kansas City. And that's the nicest way to put it. And this is what happens, though, in many cases. The people that are running for these seats are those who are driven by ego or power or money. They're not doing it to give back in many cases. Now, I think some people are. I think people who have had successful private careers and then get into local politics, i.e. a Sean Smith, who's on the county legislature, who is, going to make a run for Congress against Emmanuel Cleaver. Like, those people you take seriously. The problem is, especially in bluer counties, that doesn't happen. You don't have adults running the show. And then you end up with the makeup of Jackson County, and you end up with all the issues. But, if I was John Sherman, and, he probably feels this way because hindsight is 20/20. And Clark Hunt to a lesser extent, but definitely John Sherman. If you had this big grandiose plan and you knew that you had to get this thing through a county legislature and through a county executive, and you wanted it to be as seamless a process as possible, man, I would have put some money into some of these local races and made sure that we had competent people on the county legislature. Because we don't. And it would have cost you a lot less than the millions and millions of dollars it cost you to run this campaign that got you blown out by 16 points. Frank White had a solid competitor in Teresa Galvin. She was a Republican. I don't know if John Sherman's a Republican or not, but oftentimes in these local elections, like being a Republican or being a Democrat, it doesn't mean what it means at the national level. The issues are very different. So look at the people for who they are. And when Frank White was up for re-election, most of us noted that, there's a lot of question marks here in terms of how this county's being run. But he was Frank White. He had the name ID. He had the cachet. And there was not a lot of money spent against him. There should have been, but there wasn't. So now you got 4 more years of this. And if the Chiefs and the Royals wanted my opinion, I would have told them, hey, you guys want to get a deal done? You want it to be seamless? You want to leave out the petty politics? You should start at the top. But they didn't look ahead. They either didn't realize, and I don't expect Clark Hunt to really necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with local politics, but he's got to have somebody doing it for him. So does John Sherman. I mean, they could listen to the show, but I understand they're busy guys. So they may not catch every single segment, although John Sherman did tell us out at the ballpark when we were out there for opening day that he is a listener, and he does hear what many of you say. But we would have said, hey, man, your first hurdle is figuring out what to do with the county executive. And had he gotten him out a couple of years ago, or at least, maybe put some money behind an opponent, you might have ended up with a different situation here last month. It's entirely possible. So now the question is, where are these two teams today with the Royals, or where are these two teams today with the county? Yesterday, Frank White and Manny Abarca went back and forth on this in the Jackson County legislative meeting, and here's what it sounded like.
Is there any target strategy going forward here? I mean, I don't know the contents of the letter. Is that something you're willing to share with us?
Not at this time, but I'm willing to share. But we just got the email this morning, and we haven't had a chance to sit down and work through it and see what the next steps are. But as soon as we get that, we'll make sure you guys are caught up on it.
That's Frank White saying to the legislature that he sent a letter from the county to the Chiefs and the Royals last week, about a month after that vote went down in flames. And he said that he has received a response from the Chiefs, but he has not received a response from the Royals. I wouldn't hold my breath on waiting for a response from the Royals right now. I'm pretty confident the Royals do not want to spend another dime in Jackson County, at least at the county level. They may work with the city of Kansas City, Missouri in Jackson County, but something tells me the Royals are not interested at this point in time in spending another dime at the county level.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money?
No way. Oh, Jesus. No, I would say the Royals are officially in a place where they don't believe Jackson County is worth their Red Lobster money. I think that's a safe bet right now. So Frank White's going to be waiting a while to get that litter back. But the fact that the Chiefs responded tells me that there's hope. And that the Chiefs, as I've said since this conversation began weeks ago, it makes sense for the Chiefs to want to make it work where they are, especially if the Royals are gone. You get that entire facility and space to yourself. You can get it done. You can put a sales tax on the ballot that is cheaper than 3/8 of a cent, but is more than the 3/16 of a cent you were about to get when you divide 3/8 of a cent by 2 and you give half to the Royals and half to the Chiefs. You could find yourself saying, hey, we're going to lower your taxes. Here's a 1/4 cent sales tax for us. You get more money out of it. It makes sense for the Chiefs to do business with Jackson County. The Royals, I don't know. That entire relationship between the county and the Royals and everybody involved feels completely broken. And I don't know how you can mend those fences. In fact, I don't think you can. But it all ties back to the people in charge and the people in power. And boy, it's not the most impressive group. It's not the most impressive crop. And that's how you end up with some of the issues that you've got right now in Jackson County, not just with the teams, but with things like property taxes, with things like ransomware attacks. It's a complete and utter mess. 7:14 on a Tuesday. Dave Traubert with the Kansas Policy Institute, bottom of the hour. Tirade Tuesday is next hour at 8:30. So start thinking about your tirades, whatever you want. The floor will be yours, as it always is, at 8:35 on Tuesday here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Coming up next, the biggest poll item that is probably getting overlooked. We'll share it with you on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming for free on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Bill O'Reilly's right. I wouldn't go see Stormy Daniels perform in South Jersey. No thanks. Her cat might show up. So he's spot on. Alvin Bragg, no chance, no way, no how. But yeah, all the talk about Donald Trump bringing out the 100,000, whatever it was. I mean, Chris Stegall said yesterday on the show, and Chris was great if you missed him. It was good to hear his voice again on KCMO. It's up on the podcast if you want to hear it there. He was there in Wildwood. He said it was 60,000 on the beach and then another 20-ish thousand, boardwalks, surrounding areas, watching on the big screen. So whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. Whether you want to call it 100 or 80. Point is, Joe ain't filling a phone booth. All right?
Come on, man.
He's not. He's not filling a phone booth. So it's damn impressive. No, does it guarantee you any wins? No, it doesn't. But it was quite a scene, and it was telling based on where it was, which Bill O'Reilly also noted. Now, this came from the Wall Street Journal here yesterday. And anytime you get Seinfeld in the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal, to me, that's a win. It's written by Alicia Finley, and she writes here, the George Costanza presidency. And I'm like, how's this going to work? And then I thought to myself, oh, this is perfect. So I'll share this with you, just a couple of lines, then get into the most important part of this poll that gets referenced and why it matters. In a classic Seinfeld reference, Finley writes, George Costanza bemoans that every decision he's made has been wrong. His life, as a result, has turned out the opposite of what he intended. She then adds, Joe Biden might relate. His presidency probably hasn't gone as he'd hoped. 2 wars, a border crisis, and near record inflation have erupted. A Gallup poll last week found that confidence in his economic stewardship is lower than for any president this century other than George W. Bush during the height of the 2008 financial crisis. But like George Costanza, Mr. Biden only has himself to blame. Both men create more trouble for themselves as each poor decision leads to another. And that's exactly right. So I looked up this poll that Alicia Finley was referencing in this George Costanza editorial in the Wall Street Journal. And the most important point, it's got 70 some odd questions in it here. It's a poll from The Economist and YouGov done May 5th through May 7th. So here in the last week or so, this poll was done. And it went through 71 questions last night. And the one that stood out to me is the following question. They asked the question about both candidates. Question number 27. The economy better if Biden elected? Like, if Joe Biden is reelected president in November, do you think the economy will ... get better, get worse, stay the same, not sure? 21% of respondents across the political aisle believe that the economy will get better if Joe Biden is reelected. 47% say it's going to get worse. That is minus 26. Joe is 26 points underwater when asked by the American electorate if the economy will get worse or get better under his watch. By 26% margin, people say it's going to get worse. Very next question. If Donald Trump is elected, do you think the economy will get better, get worse, stay the same? Not sure. Get better, 42%, double Joe's number of 21. Get worse, 34%. So Trump is plus 6. Get better versus get worse amongst the American voter. Joe Biden is minus 26, get worse. I mean, that right there is game, set, match, unless Donald Trump figures out how to screw it up. But there's nothing he needs to do. And I know he doesn't want to hear that probably, but there's nothing he needs to do. If those numbers hold up, he could be in a coma and beat this guy. Now, there might be 2 people in a coma by the time we get there, but you get the point. The guy doesn't have to do anything. In fact, less is more. It's kind of amazing the polls are as close as they are, considering one guy is plus 6 on the question of will the economy improve if he gets elected, and the other guy is minus 26 on whether or not the American people perceive the economy to be getting better if he wins. What more do you need? If I put that data in front of you, or if I put that data in front of Donald Trump, I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, I'm just going to kick my feet up. I'm going to try to get through these sham trials. And after that, I'm going to try to just win the election, pointing to what this guy has done over the last 3 years, because people don't like it. And here's the other message. If you're Team Biden, stop trying to convince people that they're better off than they think they are. It is such a turnoff when somebody tries to tell you that your feelings are inaccurate. Listen to me. I'll tell you how you're really doing. And they've tried this for now years. And the American voter isn't buying it. And it's gotten to the point of just being insulting. Just tell me what you're doing going forward. So here's what we've got. This just dropped in the last 15 minutes or so. The producer price index rising to 2.2%, in line with the expectations of 2.2%. Core producer price index inflation was 2.4%, also in line with the expectations. However, on a month-over-month basis, producer price index inflation rose by 0.5%, well above the expectations of 0.3%. So PPI inflation is now up for 3 straight months, for the first time since April of 2022. You heard that right. Producer price index numbers, which is not the classic inflation number. That's CPI. We'll get that tomorrow morning. But this is basically what it is costing producers to make their goods and produce their services, is basically what this is. This number comes in hotter than expected month over month. And this is a number that basically captures what companies pay for their supplies and their product. And those costs are often passed on to us, the customers at the retail level. So it gives you an idea as to whether inflation is rising or falling. And clearly what you have here from a big picture perspective is the rate of inflation getting stuck well above the Fed's target of a 2% annual goal, which means you're not getting that rate cut anytime soon to buy a house, to buy a car, unless Jerome Powell's just, going to go full kamikaze pilot on us here. There's no way it's going to happen, John.
Yeah, but I'm doing better than I think I am, right?
Yeah, well, that's what you're told, man.
Right? Yeah.
Let's go. It's a boom time.
Boom, boom, boom.
That's right. We're booming here. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It doesn't matter, the crunch that's happening in your house when it comes to groceries. Forget eating out. Eating out has become a fortune. That's why, you got a McDonald's meal that's running you $10 for a medium fry and a medium soda. It's ridiculous. That's why the people, have you seen this? This is if you want to know where the economy's at right now, this is from a couple of months ago, I want to say, but I saw it and it just stuck with me. The percentage of households that make over $100,000 a year that are eating at Red Lobster is the highest of all time.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money.
Oh, Jesus, that's right. So what that tells me is that people on the, maybe the middle class folks who might typically go to Red Lobster, they're getting priced out of Red Lobster. And the people who might go to a, shall we say, a higher end seafood joint are instead electing to go to Red Lobster. I know. The biscuits are great. I've heard it a million times. Sorry, I'm not going down that road right now on the biscuits, all right? John will make them at home and bring them in one day. I'll try the biscuits that way.
It's so Midwestern, right? We go to the fish place to eat the biscuits.
But when you have that kind of a data point that shows the percentage of people making six figures or more are increasing their spend at Red Lobster, and the people in, a more middle-class income bracket are not going there as much, that's case in point. Eating out's become a luxury in many cases. And you can look back to lines like this, the Producer Price Index, as a prime example of why. So if you thought there was any sign that the Fed was going to be cutting rates anytime soon, this would have been one of those signs. Now, we'll get the CPI, the inflation number, comes down tomorrow at 7:30. So we'll have that right here when it breaks on KCMO. But just know this as well. These preliminary numbers are not good. When you've got Producer Price Index inflation up for 3 straight months now for the first time in over 2 years, and this goes back to April of 22, and that's when inflation really started taking off. We started to feel the effects of horrible monetary policy during COVID and then thereafter. This is what you end up with. It's a terrible situation. And it's one that, we're obviously going to monitor here on KCMO, but it's not a good sign because people are hurting. They want to get those rates down, and, I'd love those rates to come down, but you can't reduce them right now. You can't. It'd be suicide for the economy. On a much better note, this also broke here in the last hour. Chiefs opening up, of course, against the Ravens. We got that yesterday. Week 2, they will play the Cincinnati Bengals at Arrowhead Stadium, 3:25 kickoff. Jim Nantz and the goober himself, Tony Romo, on the call. That is also at Arrowhead, week 2. So the Chiefs opening up. Boy, that's a tough opening slate. Ravens and Bengals back-to-back, but they will have both games at home, and also you'll have 10 days off.
I like that. I like that they get the extra few days for the Bengals.
I like that as well, too. But they're clearly the NFL is going to do what it can to try to bring the Chiefs back down to earth a little bit. Listen, that's what makes the NFL great from a parity perspective. Now, the Chiefs keep bucking that trend. They don't want dynasties in the NFL. They really don't. But because the emphasis on the quarterback position now in the modern-day NFL, when you get that Tom Brady, when you get that Patrick Mahomes, you can buck that trend. No matter how difficult the NFL tries to make it for you with tougher scheduling, later picks in the NFL draft, doesn't matter. I mean, they're able to buck that trend, and we're seeing that, of course, in real time right now here in Kansas City. But that's a tough opening slate. But when you got them both at home and you got the extra days off to prepare for the Bengals, I'm kind of like, all right, that's cool. Let's have some fun. Let's see how it goes. But, man, Arrowhead's going to be rocking. and you love those September games. It's still like summertime around here, so you're sweating. Beer's ice cold, place is rocking, and it's going to be here before we know it. What do we got? 1, 2, we got 3, 4 months right around the corner. Can't wait.